Hey guys, tonight we're climbing down the rickety metal ladder of history and sealing ourselves inside one of the strangest, stale-smelling dreams humanity ever had. The 1950s fallout shelter. That's right. The place your grandparents genuinely thought they might have to spend several years eating canned peaches, listening to AM radio, and trying not to strangle each other in a room the size of a modern laundry closet. Before we get comfy, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy this kind of thing. No pressure at all. And thank you for suggesting this topic. It was such a fun one to dive into. Drop a comment telling me where you're listening from and what time it is. It's always 2 a.m. somewhere, and someone's always torn between falling asleep or Googling. Can humans actually survive on spam alone? Now dim the lights, switch on a fan for that soft, cozy hum, curl up under something warm, and settle in. Because tonight we're asking the real questions about 1950s shelter life. Like, what did it actually smell like in there? Did people really think board games could stop nuclear anxiety? How many cans of beans does it take before someone stages a coup? Why did every family pretend they were totally fine living inside a glorified metal shoebox? And what happens when you try to raise a teenager underground with no sunlight, no privacy, and one single shared toilet? And now, congratulations, you've just woken up in a fallout shelter. The year is 1958. The Cold War is simmering, your neighbours are definitely spying on each other, and you're lying on a bunk bed that feels like a punishment from God. Good luck. You're gonna need it. You open your eyes to the soft, soothing sound of a ventilation fan that may or may not be held together with chewing gum. The air tastes faintly like canned soup, recycled breath, and something your brain politely refuses to identify. Overhead, a single buzzing bulb flickers, reminding you that electricity is a privilege and also a threat, because if it goes out, you're basically living in a tomb with decor. For a moment, you lie very still on your narrow metal bunk, trying to remember where you are and why everything feels like it's been lightly steamed in human anxiety. Then it hits you. Not the radiation outside, no, that's a theoretical problem. What hits you is the bunk bed frame above you, because you sat up too fast and forgot how low the clearance is. Congratulations, you're awake in a fallout shelter in the late 1950s, and the ceiling has already punched you once. You wiggle your toes under the government-issued blanket, which is somehow both too thin and aggressively itchy. Like the army contracted a textile mill that specialised exclusively in discomfort. The fabric smells faintly of cardboard, old pennies, and the tears of whoever had to sew it. The mattress beneath you is only called a mattress because rectangular pad of compressed sadness didn't fit on the supply forms. The fan continues its soft metallic wheeze, pushing air that has been breathed by every member of your family approximately 14 times. You take a careful inhale through your nose because that seems less risky, and mentally review the fallout shelter survival pamphlet taped crookedly to the wall. It is full of cheerful illustrations of smiling Americans enjoying life underground, which feels a lot like lying but with cartoon shading. Now that you're conscious, your brain begins its daily ritual of asking important questions. Questions like, did the world end while I was asleep? What if the radiation levels are higher today? And is that smell coming from the trash, the toilet, or Uncle Harold? The answer is yes. You shift onto your side and peer across the shelter. The room, or tube, or bunker, or metallic coffin, depending on your mood, is exactly as small as you remember. The walls curve inward in a way that suggests whoever designed this space did not believe humans needed shoulders. A row of canned goods gleams eerily in the low light, labels turned outward like proud little trophies. Canned meat, canned vegetables, canned things the label won't explain because the 1950s trusted you less than you trusted them. The floor is cold under your feet when you finally step down, and the bunker gives a soft groan as if annoyed you're making it work this early. You stretch, which is difficult because your arms immediately hit 2 different surfaces that shouldn't be that close together. Compared to this place, the average airline seat feels luxurious. At least airplanes don't trap you with your own carbon dioxide for weeks at a time. You shuffle toward the tiny common area, which is really just a folding table surrounded by chairs too small for adult humans. They look like they were designed for dolls, or possibly accountants. On the table sits a stack of civil defense pamphlets offering soothing messages like radiation, it's probably fine if you don't breathe too deeply, and maintaining morale through card games and denial. You flip through one half-heartedly while blinking your way through the early morning bunker haze. Behind you someone stirs. A bunk creaks. Someone coughs a cough that suggests they swallowed dust in their sleep, which, honestly, they did. The air here is 1 part oxygen, 1 part canned food vapour, and 1 part pulverised metal. It's a cocktail no mixologist would ever serve unless they hated you deeply. As more family members start to wake, the shelter fills with the soft soundtrack of people pretending they're okay. There's a certain bravado required to live underground, an optimism that says, no, we're not trapped. We're just indoors. Extremely indoors. You try to mirror it. You straighten up. You pretend your back doesn't hurt from sleeping on a slab that actively dislikes you. But beneath the cheeriness, there's always the hum of Cold War dread. A quiet thought that whispers, the world might be ending, but please keep your voice down because the walls echo. You glance at the sealed hatch, your only door to the outside world, and wonder if today is the day someone opens it with good news, or if you'll wake up tomorrow to the same dim bulb, the same stale air, and the same unsettling feeling that the bunker is shrinking in slow, almost polite increments. And with that thought, your day begins, cramped, flickering, slightly metallic, and somehow survivable. Because down here, comfort is optional. But waking up means you've made it through another night underground. And in the 1950s, that alone counts as victory. Before you can fully sit up, the aroma of the shelter hits you, an intoxicating blend of iron, damp concrete, and the unmistakable tang of long-term deodorant neglect. In the 1950s, people stocked shelters with food, water, and medical supplies, but not a single item for managing body odour. The government simply assumed the enemy would surrender once they got a whiff. You inhale carefully, as if the air might bite you. It doesn't bite, but it does linger. The scent wraps around you like a damp wool blanket no one asked for. It's the kind of smell that feels like it has weight, texture, and possibly an immortal soul. You try breathing through your mouth, but that's somehow worse. The taste is metallic, like licking a penny dipped in soup. You're awake now, not thanks to the flickering lights or your internal clock, but because your nose filed an official complaint with your brain. A fallout shelter was never meant to smell good. At best, it was supposed to smell like nothing. But humans, especially nervous, sweating, confined humans, are basically scent generators with legs. Add several of them to a small, sealed room with questionable ventilation, and you don't just get a smell, you get an atmosphere, a climate, a micro-ecosystem of odours that evolve, merge, and occasionally fight for dominance like tiny invisible bantam roosters. You sit up and notice the familiar hierarchy of bunker scents already forming for the day. The metal smell comes first, crisp, cold, slightly rusty, like someone melted down a bunch of nickels and asked you to breathe them. Then comes the concrete scent, which somehow manages to smell moist, a baffling achievement for a building material. Finally, weaving in and out like a jazz soloist, is the unmistakable scent of humanity. Not the poetic version. No, this is the version that reminds you humans are basically animals with opinions, and the longer people stay underground, the more ambitious the smell becomes. Day 1, mild discomfort. Day 3, noticeable funk. Day 7, the bunker has developed a personality. Day 14, the bunker could legally vote and declare itself a sovereign nation-state named Something Smells Wrong. You shuffle over to the shelves where the canned goods live, not because you're hungry, but because the metal scent over here temporarily overpowers the human notes. You take another cautious inhale. The bunker smell is many things, but subtle is not one of them. If perfume companies ever learn how to bottle this aroma, they'll call it something fancy like essence of survival, and sell it to people who claim they like earthy scents, but have clearly never been trapped underground with sweaty relatives. The worst part, your brain eventually adapts. What was once an assault becomes a background hum. You stop noticing it until someone new wakes up and loudly says, "Wow, something stinks," reminding everyone the odour is still thriving like a fungus with a strong work ethic. It's the 1950s version of group trauma bonding. As you navigate the bunker, you realise certain areas are more dangerous than others. The corner by the chemical toilet? Absolutely deadly, a no-go zone. Anyone who enters comes out changed. Then there's the teenage zone, where hormonal despair has reached a level of scent potency that technically qualifies as a biological weapon. Children contribute too, small, sticky, constantly emitting hints of jam, fear and vague mildew. You try to imagine what fresh air even smells like. Grass, sunshine, optimism, all foreign concepts now. At this point, oxygen that hasn't been filtered through 6 people and a ventilation fan feels like a myth told by travelling bards. Still, the bunker smell, awful as it is, also means something important. You're alive. Everyone in here is. You're still breathing the terrible, recycled air of a world that hasn't ended yet. And in a way, the smell becomes a weird badge of survival. A reminder that humans can adapt to almost anything, even an odour strong enough to bend steel. You exhale slowly, accepting your nasal fate. Down here, the smell isn't going anywhere, and neither are you, not yet. Not until the all-clear sounds and the hatch opens, or until someone finally finds the courage to open that deodorant tin you all agreed not to talk about. You shuffle toward the tiny kitchen, which is really just a shelf and a stove that looks like it resents being alive. Breakfast options include powdered eggs, powdered milk, powdered potatoes, and powdered hopes and dreams. Everything tastes like someone described a real meal out loud, and the powder tried its best to imitate the memory. You stare at the metal can of EG product, wondering which government worker was bold enough to decide that those 2 words belong together. You tap the lid. It sounds hollow, like the can itself knows you're about to make a mistake. You pry it open carefully, half expecting a puff of dust to fly into your face and age you 10 years instantly. Inside is a beige powder, so nondescript it could be anything. Flour, sand, dehydrated sadness. You scoop some into a bowl, add water, stir, and watch the mixture transform into a thick slurry that looks like scrambled eggs, in the way a drawing of a cat looks like a real cat. Conceptual at best. The stove flickers weakly as you turn it on. It heats in a way that feels deeply reluctant, like it's exhausted from doing the same depressing job day after day. You pour the egg mixture into a pan and immediately regret every life choice that brought you to this moment. It sizzles, then congeals, then forms clumps that look like they're preparing to unionize. You stir them cautiously. They stir back. To accompany your eggs, you have the option of powdered milk, another triumph of science over flavour. You mix the powder with water until it resembles the consistency of sadness diluted with tap water. You take a sip. It tastes like the concept of dairy filtered through chalk. You try not to make a face, but your face makes one anyway. Then there are the potatoes. Oh, the potatoes. The 1950s believed wholeheartedly in the nutritional value of potatoes, but only after removing everything that made them potatoes. The powdered version is a thick white dust that, when rehydrated, becomes a smooth paste best described as culinary wallpaper. You dollop it onto your plate like mortar. It jiggles once, ominously. You try not to think about that. Breakfast in the bunker isn't just food, it's a psychological test. Every bite is a reminder that the world above may or may not be on fire, but the world below definitely hates your taste buds. As you sit at the folding table, the powdered egg steam drifting lazily upward, your family gathers around you. They too stare at their plates with the quiet resignation of people who know this is the best it's going to get. You take your first bite. The eggs are somehow fluffy and dense at the same time, like a memory foam mattress that has lost the will to support anyone. The potatoes are warm but flavourless, a perfect example of food that fills the stomach while offering no joy to the soul. And the milk? Well, you drink it because hydration is important, even if it tastes like existential dread. Someone across from you sprinkles salt over their meal, but salt only enhances flavour. There is no flavour here. The salt simply confirms that the food is real, and unfortunately you are too. As you chew, you can't help comparing bunker breakfast to modern meals. Fresh fruit? Not happening. Bacon? Absolutely not. Avocado toast? The government would arrest you for saying those words underground. Down here, breakfast is less about starting your day right and more about convincing your body to keep functioning despite overwhelming evidence that life has become absurd. The ventilation fan whirs overhead, pushing the smell of powdered eggs into every corner of the shelter. You wonder, not for the first time, whether radiation is truly the scariest thing happening in your life right now. And yet, as bleak as it is, you eat. Everyone does. Because the human spirit is weirdly persistent. Because even in a cramped fallout shelter, with food made of dust and denial, you're still alive. Still waking up. Still sitting at a table with people who are just as hungry, just as tired, just as annoyed by powdered cuisine as you are. And when you finish your meal, your plate empty, your dignity bruised, you realise something important. Surviving breakfast in the bunker is the hardest part of the morning. Everything else, from radiation worries to claustrophobic despair, somehow feels easier once you've choked down eggs that never actually met a chicken. You take a deep breath. It tastes like powder and resilience. Getting dressed underground is an exercise in accepting disappointment. Your clothes, once crisp and optimistic, now smell like bunker air and bunker air's regrets. And because laundering anything is basically impossible down here, you're wearing yesterday's outfit again, and tomorrow's, and possibly the entire month's. You peel yourself out of your bunk and eye your outfit hanging on the wall, if you can call being draped over a nail hanging. It slumps there like a defeated ghost, wrinkled in places you didn't know fabric could wrinkle. You reach for the shirt and give it a tentative shake. It doesn't move so much as it crackles. That's never a good sign for anything meant to touch human skin. But this is bunker fashion in the late 1950s. Utility over beauty, durability over dignity. You slip into your clothes, which have now moulded themselves to your body shape in a way that is not flattering so much as uncomfortably clingy, like a needy cat. The shirt smells faintly of metal, sweat, nerves, and the lingering presence of powdered eggs. If scents had colour, this one would be a muddy grey with hints of yellow. You smooth your hands down your wrinkled sleeves, which accomplishes nothing except redistributing the wrinkles into different artistic formations. The creases deepen near the elbow, soften near the wrist, then fold over themselves like origami made by someone who gave up halfway through. You squint in the dim light and think, is this fashion? Or is this a textile cry for help? Hard to say. Your pants are no better. They've lost whatever structure they once had and now hang with the shapeless energy of a deflated tent. You pull them on, feeling every stiff fold pressed gently but judgmentally into your legs. Once upon a time these pants promised adventure. Now they promise chafing. The lack of laundry options means you've developed a new internal clothing rubric. Not actively moist, wearable, only slightly smelly, suitable for public bunker activity, smells like despair. Turn it inside out and pretend ignorance. You've become a connoisseur of wearing clothes far past their intended expiration date. You tell yourself it builds character. Really, it just builds layers of fabric-based trauma. Around you, the rest of the family dons their own bunker uniforms, identical to yours in their defeated posture. Uncle Harold's shirt has developed a collar that points in 3 different directions, like it's trying to escape the bunker entirely. Your siblings' socks have formed stiff, unforgiving shapes that defy both gravity and reason. No one mentions these problems aloud. In wartime, Cold War or otherwise, silence is a gift. You consider brushing your hair but decide against it. What's the point? Without humidity, sunlight or joy, your hair's taken on a personality of its own. It floats slightly upward, defying the laws of physics, as if it's trying to reach the world above. You let it. Down here, getting ready is less a process and more a ritual of surrender. There's no ironing, no washing machines, no wardrobe changes. You grab what you wore yesterday and trust no one has the energy to judge you, mostly because they're wearing the same thing too. Still, as you stand in the cramped space adjusting your collar, you realise clothing in the bunker actually serves a different purpose now. It's not about looking good. It's about maintaining a tiny shred of normalcy in a place where normalcy feels like an endangered species. Putting on a shirt, even a wrinkled, crunchy, faintly tragic one, signals the day is starting. It gives your hands something to do, your mind something to focus on, and your spirit something to cling to besides powdered potatoes and existential dread. You sit on your bunk for a moment and take in the scene. Everyone in various shades of beige, grey and surrender. It looks like a fashion show sponsored by government-issued hopelessness. But beneath the wrinkles, under the smells, hidden between the layers of dust and rationing, era fabric fatigue, there's survival. Quiet, persistent survival. So you take a deep breath, ignoring the scent of bunker air embedded in your shirt fibres. You straighten your spine, you tell yourself today will be fine. And you step into the day, which is really just a slightly better lit version of the night before, wearing clothes that refuse to improve but continue, faithfully, stubbornly, to hold you together in the dark. Somehow, that's enough. Here it is, the single most feared structure in the entire shelter, the shared chemical toilet. It sits in the corner behind a flimsy curtain, radiating a sense of doom unmatched by any mushroom cloud. Every visit is a negotiation between your dignity, your survival, and your ability to hold your breath for 90 consecutive seconds. You stare at it from across the bunker as one might regard a sleeping bear, motionless but dangerous. The curtain meant to provide privacy sways in the musty air, though privacy is a myth down here. Everyone knows exactly what you're doing behind that thin floral fabric. They can hear it. They can smell it. They can sense it on a spiritual level. The toilet itself is not porcelain, not in this economy. It is a plastic lidded contraption that looks like a cooler, and a punishment had a child. The chemical reservoir inside sloshes faintly whenever someone walks too close, as if whispering, "I contain multitudes." No one wants to picture these multitudes. Everyone does anyway. Your turn comes faster than expected because in a fallout shelter, human biology refuses to respect scheduling. You approach slowly, like a medieval peasant approaching a dragon cave. The curtain brushes against your shoulder, a reminder of the thousands of shoulders it has brushed before. You try not to think about that. Once inside the makeshift stall, the world becomes very small. You can practically touch all 4 walls without moving your feet. The air is thick, humid, and infused with a potent blend of chemical deodorizer and human suffering. You take a deep breath, an error you instantly regret. The instructions for the toilet are taped to the wall. They are written in cheery government language designed to make you feel less alone, which somehow makes everything worse. Step 1. Sit comfortably. There is nothing comfortable about this. Step 2. Use sparingly. You would love to. Biology disagrees. Step 3. Add 1 scoop of neutralizing powder. It is not neutralizing anything. It is staging a quiet mutiny. Sitting down, you realize you're performing a vulnerable act in a room full of people who are trying very hard not to make eye contact with the curtain. The sounds are unavoidable. The chemical smell intensifies. You consider abandoning civilization entirely and becoming a creature who no longer needs toilets. When you finally finish, you complete the ritual, scoop, flush, lid down, curtain sweep. Emerging feels like stepping out of a confession booth. Everyone pretends not to notice your return, which is the most merciful lie they will ever tell you. In return, you pretend not to notice that the next person is already nervously shifting, trying to decide if they can afford to wait another hour. Some try to add little improvements. A sprig of dried lavender appeared once. Someone taped a magazine page of a tropical beach above the toilet, so you could theoretically imagine warm breezes and fresh air while contemplating chemical fumes. One family member even attempted to play music during their visits, a bold move that only highlighted the acoustics problem. But the truth is, nothing fixes the communal toilet experience. Not politeness, not humour, not singing loudly in hopes of masking the horrors within. The toilet remains a vortex of communal shame, a reminder that the human body simply refuses to take a vacation during national emergencies. And yet, as awful as it is, the toilet is also a weirdly bonding experience. Everyone shares the misery. Everyone negotiates the airspace. Everyone agrees that if the curtain ever falls off, civilization will collapse instantly. Down here, vulnerability is unavoidable, and somehow that softens the edges. You glance back at the cursed structure as you rejoin the group, grateful to be free of it for at least a few hours. You inhale the fresher, broader bunker air, a relative term, and feel the smallest spark of triumph. You faced the beast and survived. Because in the 1950s fallout shelter, bravery isn't measured by who can handle radiation drills or rationing spreadsheets. It's measured by who can walk behind that curtain, endure the chemical abyss, and return with their soul mostly intact. And congratulations. Today, that hero is you. Outside, the world might be glowing. Inside, everyone pretends to be calm while quietly wondering whether they're about to sprout a third ear. The government pamphlets told you radiation was scary, but also somehow fine if you crouch behind a picnic table. None of it makes sense, especially from underground. The truth is, radiation in the 1950s occupies a strange space in the public consciousness. Half terrifying science, half poorly explained children's cartoon. You've read enough civil defense brochures to know that radiation is invisible, odorless, tasteless, and has an attitude problem. It can drift through walls, cling to dust, linger in rain, and if the pamphlets are to be believed, be defeated by holding a clipboard in front of your face. You're not convinced. As you sit on your bunk, the buzzing fluorescent bulb flickering overhead, you catch yourself wondering irrational things. Will your hair fall out? Will your teeth glow? Will your bones start humming like a tuning fork? Nobody knows. That's the terrifying part. Everyone in the bunker is living in a strange psychological soup. 2 parts fear, 1 part denial, and a generous scoop of, we're not talking about this because nobody wants to panic Dad. Someone across the room coughs. This is enough to make 3 people look up sharply. Not because they think it's illness. Oh no, illness is simple, manageable. Radiation, though, that's the real villain. Every cough, sneeze, and throat clear becomes suspect. Your brain immediately whispers, is this it? Are we melting now? You quietly tell it to shut up. The government has provided you with a fallout handbook, a slim, cheerful booklet filled with cartoon mascots who look astonishingly calm for people living in a nuclear era. One page shows a smiling family enjoying dinner under a mushroom cloud backdrop. Another explains that dust is your enemy now. A later page helpfully instructs you to remain indoors until instructed otherwise, which, while technically correct advice, reads less like emergency protocol and more like something your mother used to shout at you during storms. Still, everyone clings to these pamphlets as if they contain secret knowledge. They don't. They contain optimism printed in bulk. Breakfast conversations now come with side dishes of speculation. Someone wonders aloud whether radiation can seep through the concrete. Another insists the shelter's steel frame is practically invincible. Someone else points out that steel melts. This comment earns them a 30-minute silent treatment from the entire bunker population. Every few hours, someone checks the Geiger counter, an object that looks like a metal lunchbox with a personality disorder. It clicks, whirs, and occasionally emits a rapid chatter that makes everyone freeze mid-motion. No one knows what the clicks actually mean, but everyone nods in grave understanding, pretending to interpret the data. In truth, the Geiger counter is essentially a very tense maraca. The most stressful part is the not knowing. You can't see outside, can't check the sky, can't judge for yourself whether the world is ending or simply being dramatic. You're forced to rely on second-hand instructions from people who once advised children to hide under school desks during nuclear blasts. Trust is hard to come by. Radiation anxiety becomes part of daily life, a lifestyle choice, if you will. You develop habits. You stop touching the walls just in case. You avoid sitting too close to the hatch. You begin rationing your fresh air fantasies. You imagine the particles drifting outside like tiny angry bees. You hope, deeply hope, that the shelter is doing what it's supposed to do. And yet, despite the dread, people adapt. Humans always do. Soon, speculation becomes background noise. Someone starts a card game, someone else naps. The children draw pictures of mushroom clouds that no responsible adult knows how to handle emotionally. Life in the bunker continues, fear woven into the mundane, like a thread in fabric you can't unravel. One night, as you lie awake listening to the steady thrum of the ventilation fan, you accept a strange truth. You will never know how dangerous the radiation actually is. Not now, maybe not ever. But you do know something else. Something oddly comforting. You're still here. Still breathing. Still waiting for the all clear. And surviving the waiting, surviving the not knowing, might just be the bravest part of all. So you roll over, pull the itchy blanket up to your chin, and whisper to yourself the unofficial mantra of every fallout shelter resident. If I don't think about it, it can't hurt me. Unscientific. Absolutely. Effective? Surprisingly, yes. As you sip your reconstituted orange beverage, your family attempts casual chit-chat. But every topic ultimately circles back to, do you think we'll survive? Do you think the Soviets have lasers? And does anyone remember what fresh air tastes like? You swirl the orange drink in your cup, watching the powdered sediment drift like tiny citrus snowflakes. The flavour is not quite orange, not quite medicine, and not quite anything nature ever intended. Still, the warm colour is nice to look at, and in a bunker, aesthetics count for a surprising amount of emotional stability. Across the table, your family sits in a loose semicircle, chairs angled awkwardly to navigate the cramped space. Breakfast conversation is an attempt at normalcy, an attempt that always begins the same way. Someone asks how everyone slept, poorly. Someone else comments on the temperature, stale. And a third person tries desperately to tell a joke nobody has the energy to laugh at. Then inevitably the cheerful panic phase begins. Your mother leans forward and says something like, "Well, good news everyone, we made it through another night." As if this is a sitcom and the laugh track will kick in. But your father responds by staring into his powdered eggs with the solemn intensity of a man reading his own will. A few seats over, Uncle Harold has theories. He always has theories. He launches into one before you've even had a second sip of orange beverage. He whispers loudly, because bunker acoustics don't understand whispering, that he heard a radio show once claiming the Soviets were developing mine beams. This sparks 3 arguments, 6 side conversations, and 1 prolonged sigh from your sibling, who's emotionally checked out for the remainder of the meal. Cheery panic, as it turns out, is a delicate balance. The art of pretending everything is fine while constantly reminding each other that nothing is fine, but smiling anyway because that's what polite society expects. Your grandfather, who grew up in the Great Depression, and therefore believes he is unshakable, contributes his usual commentary. "You kids don't know hardship," he declares, even though, as far as hardships go, living in a sealed metal bunker during the Cold War feels competitive. He launches into a story about eating a boot once, which derails the conversation for several minutes while everyone tries to figure out if he's being metaphorical. Meanwhile, the younger kids bounce in their seats, blissfully unaware of the existential dread marinating in the bunker air. Their breakfast questions include things like, do ants survive nuclear war? And if I eat 10 vitamins, will I become a superhero? No one is prepared to answer these. You try to steer the conversation towards something lighter. What should we do today, you ask? But this only triggers more panic disguised as positivity. Your mother suggests reading. Your father suggests organising the canned goods. Uncle Harold suggests building a periscope out of cardboard tubes to check for enemy forces. Grandfather suggests everyone stop complaining and eat their powdered food like heroes. Every suggestion collapses into another round of what-ifs. What if the air above is unsafe? What if the Geiger counter clicks faster today? What if the government forgot about you? What if this reconstituted orange drink is slowly dissolving your stomach lining? Even attempts at optimism have a tense edge. Well, someone sighs. At least we're all together. A heartwarming sentiment until you realise being all together also means sharing one toilet and one air supply. Still, there's something comforting about the routine, the table, the clinking metal spoons, the soft hum of the fan, the predictable cycle of fear to humour to fear again. Humans are astonishingly good at creating rituals that keep them sane, even in places that smell like powdered eggs and stress. By the end of the meal, the conversations have mellowed into resigned silence. You finish your orange drink. Someone wipes the condensation from the table. Someone else organises the ration tins again for comfort rather than necessity. And as you stand, stretching your stiff limbs, you realise that cheery panic is simply the language of the bunker. It's how you keep going. It's how you pretend the world above might still be there, waiting. Breakfast ends not with closure, but with that familiar exhausted conclusion. We'll find out more tomorrow, and somehow, impossibly, that feels hopeful. There's no TV, no internet, just you. A deck of cards missing the Queen of Hearts, a worn-out Monopoly board, and the crushing realisation that conversations repeat after 3 days. By week 2, you're reading canned food labels for entertainment. Boredom in the bunker isn't just a feeling, it's a force of nature. A creeping fog that rolls in the moment you wake up and settles over everything like a damp blanket. At first, you think you'll use the time productively, maybe catch up on reading, or learn a new skill or meditate. But all you have is an outdated magazine, a manual on radiation safety, and a pamphlet reminding you to keep morale high. None of these are exactly page-turners. You try playing cards, but the missing Queen of Hearts makes every game feel like a crime scene. The deck is so worn the suits are almost indistinguishable, and half the cards have absorbed enough bunker moisture to curl into tiny cardboard tacos. You propose playing Go Fish, but someone points out that without the Queen, winning is mathematically impossible. This sparks a half-hour debate nobody wants to be having. You move on to Monopoly, an optimistic choice, considering this board has survived at least 3 family vacations and 1 emotionally charged Thanksgiving. The money is torn. The dog token has been missing since the Truman administration, and the chance cards have fused together into a single papery brick. Still, it passes time until it doesn't. After 4 days straight of relentless play, you realise Monopoly is a psychological weapon capable of destroying families faster than radiation could. Conversations in the bunker follow a predictable cycle. Day 1, lively. Day 3, repetitive. Day 5, you begin answering your own questions because everyone else has mentally checked out. Someone brings up a topic you discussed 2 days ago, and instead of saying, "We already talked about that," you nod politely and pretend it's brand new. Social niceties must survive, even when society hasn't. Eventually the hunger for stimulation drives you to new lows. You begin reading canned food labels. All of them, repeatedly. It doesn't matter what the can contains, beans, potatoes, aggressively vague meat lumps. Each label becomes a tiny literary journey. You read the ingredient lists like poetry. Water, salt, dehydrated carrot flakes. Beautiful, haunting, riveting. One afternoon, you discover a can with a label misprint. The word sodium is spelled wrong. This becomes the most exciting discovery of the week. You show everyone. They react with the level of enthusiasm normally reserved for births and weddings. Your attempts at hobbies become increasingly desperate. You try journaling, but after writing the sentence "still in bunker," still bored. 7 days in a row, you realise this is less a diary and more a written obituary for your sanity. You try drawing, but pencils are limited, and every time you sketch something, a child wanders over and asks, "Is that supposed to be a horse?" No, it was supposed to be hope. Then there's pacing, the official bunker workout. You walk 5 steps in one direction and 5 back, like a zoo animal who's accepted its fate. You try changing it up, maybe zigzagging, maybe walking in circles, but in a room the size of a large pantry, creativity has boundaries. People begin inventing games. Guess that smell is immediately banned. I spy last 4 minutes. Someone suggests charades, but half the group refuses because they don't want to stand up again. Your uncle attempts to start a chess club, but the only chessboard available is one someone drew on cardboard with a pencil that broke halfway through, so half the squares don't exist. The pieces are mismatched buttons. It's chaos. And yet, strangely, boredom becomes its own form of routine, a shared experience, a communal enemy. Everyone is fighting the same silent battle, and somehow that makes it easier. There's comfort in knowing you're not losing your mind alone. You're losing it collectively, like a team-building exercise nobody asked for. Late at night, after the conversations and card games and label-reading sessions have faded into silence, you lie on your bunk staring up at the metal underside of the bed above you. The boredom settles into your bones, heavy but familiar, and you realise something. Boredom isn't the worst thing that could happen in a fallout shelter. It's a sign you're still here, still waiting, still human enough to want more than powdered eggs and card decks falling apart at the seams. And tomorrow, bless it, will be exactly the same. You sit beneath the fan, listening to its weak motor grind like it's offering its final prayers. Without it, oxygen becomes a suggestion. So everyone treats the fan with reverence, pacing anxiously whenever it makes a new sound, a wheeze, a clunk, the whisper of impending doom. In a fallout shelter, air stops being something you take for granted and becomes something you negotiate with. The fan is more than machinery. It is the thin, rattling thread between survival and a group nap from which no one wakes up. You watch its blades spin unevenly, wobbling as though each rotation is a personal insult to its lifespan. You whisper encouragement under your breath. You're not joking. Morning, afternoon, evening, the fan sets the emotional tone of the bunker. If it spins smoothly, morale is high. If it hiccups, someone cries. If it stops, even for a second, the entire shelter collectively inhales, then freezes like startled wildlife. You can almost hear everyone thinking the same thing. Not today. Please, not today. The fan is old, prehistoric even. It looks like it was salvaged from an abandoned factory or perhaps gifted by a trickster god with a dark sense of humour. Its metal casing is dented, its screws are loose, and half the protective grille is held on with tape that has long since lost the will to adhere. Every so often someone taps it with a wrench, not to fix anything, but as a ritual gesture, like knocking on wood or praying before a flight. Sometimes the fan smells faintly of oil. Other times it smells like dust and desperation, but worst of all is when it smells like nothing. Nothing means the motor isn't warm. Nothing means the blades aren't moving. Nothing means the air is still. Stillness is the enemy. Stillness means trouble. You've learned, accidentally, to detect micro-changes in airflow. You can now sense a half-degree shift in wind pressure across your cheek, like a Victorian heroine predicting a storm. If the fan slows, even minutely, you're up out of your chair, checking it, staring at it, listening closely as though it might confess its secrets. Everyone has their own relationship with the fan. Your father sits beside it every morning, eyes closed, muttering that if it fails, he'll re-enlist in the surface world. Your mother dusts it daily with the careful devotion of someone tending an ancient shrine. The children salute it when they walk past, though no one knows if they're joking. Then there's Uncle Harold, who insists he can hear the spirit inside the fan. He taps it, listens, nods solemnly and announces things like, "It's tired today," or it requests lubrication, or worst of all, "Prepare yourselves." His accuracy is unsettling. No one knows if he truly understands machinery, or if he has simply spent too long underground. The fan's noises become a second language. A healthy hum is reassurance. A low rattle means it's irritated. A high-pitched whine signals that something inside is rubbing against something it shouldn't. And a sudden loud clunk triggers the bunker's version of a fire drill. Everyone drops what they're doing and stares upward in panicked silence, breath held, hoping the blades resume. They usually do. But the fear lingers. Maintenance becomes a sacred task. Every few days, someone unscrews 2 bolts, peers inside and pretends to know what they're looking at. They wipe dust from parts whose names they do not know. They tighten random screws. They oil anything that looks like it might enjoy being oiled. It's less repair work and more emotional support for machinery. Once the fan actually did stop, it was only for 6 seconds. 6 long, horrifying, suffocating seconds. But that was enough. The air thickened instantly. Children cried. An adult fainted. Someone dramatically whispered, "Tell my story." Then the blades jerked back to life with a coughing shudder, and the shelter erupted into applause. Actual applause. For a fan. That's when you realise the truth. Down here, the fan isn't just equipment. It's a deity, a protective force, a mechanical guardian that works tirelessly, if reluctantly, to keep you alive. You would offer it sacrifices if you had anything of value left to give, snacks, trinkets, your last shred of sanity. But instead, you simply sit beneath it, listening, watching, hoping. Because in this tiny, sealed world, your faith rests not in divine miracles or government promises, but in the determined, exhausted wheeze of an overworked ventilation fan. And whether you like it or not, you believe. Your meals become a symphony of sodium. You've eaten beans in 17 different forms, all of them aggressive. Your stomach, once a trusted companion, now betrays you hourly. Gas isn't just a problem, it's a tactical hazard. At first, you try to be optimistic about bunker cuisine. After all, food is food, and survival is survival. But the optimism fades quickly, somewhere around your 4th consecutive meal of bean product. You don't even know how one bean can be broken down into this many variations. There are whole beans, mashed beans, powdered beans, bean loaf, bean spread, bean stew, and something Uncle Harold swears is bean jerky, even though no one can confirm its origin. And then there's the salt. Mountains of salt. Enough salt to convince your taste buds that you're licking a sidewalk after a snowstorm. Food from the 1950s wasn't just preserved, it was embalmed. Every can is a tiny time capsule packed with enough sodium to pickle your internal organs. You take one bite of canned ham and immediately feel your cells retreat like frightened soldiers. Powdered potatoes make a frequent appearance too, offering a smooth, unseasoned paste that tastes like someone tried to recreate a potato from memory. You stir and stir, but the flavour remains spiritually absent. Even with salt. Especially with salt. Breakfast isn't any better. Reconstituted eggs slump on your plate like exhausted yellow clouds. The powdered milk foams in a way milk should not foam. The orange drink tastes like a citrus fruit that died in a tragic industrial accident. But you choke it all down, telling yourself you're fueling your body, even though your body politely disagrees. Then there are the cans of mystery meat. Their labels faded, their contents questionable. The texture is somewhere between sponge and regret. You poke at it with your fork and it wiggles, as if debating whether to fight back. Whoever engineered this substance wasn't just thinking about longevity. They were waging psychological warfare. Your stomach begins sending you signals. Dark signals. Signals that suggest mutiny. Every mealtime becomes a gamble. Will this go smoothly? Will there be repercussions? Will you create an atmospheric event capable of driving the entire bunker population to the opposite wall? Only your intestines know for sure. And the gas... Oh, the gas. Not polite gas, not discreet whisper into a cushion gas. No. This is Cold War bunker gas. Gas that rolls through your body with the force of an approaching thunderstorm. Gas that could be weaponized under the right circumstances. You learn quickly not to sit too close to the ventilation fan. The last thing this bunker needs is biological interference in its only airflow system. Meal conversations become exercises in denial. How's the stew? Tastes warm. Is this beef? Something once lived, probably. Do you think we'll ever eat fresh vegetables again? No. Same. Occasionally, someone tries to get creative. They mix different canned items together. They call it combo night. Combo night is always worse. One evening, Uncle Harold combined powdered potatoes with canned peas and condensed mushroom soup. The structure he created was later classified as a geological formation. But even through the misery, there's a strange kind of comfort in the routine. The ritual of opening the cans, heating the food, scraping the sides of the pot. These small motions anchor your day. They remind you that time is still passing, even if very slowly, even if measured in bites and burps. And, in a strange way, the food becomes a morale booster. Not because it tastes good, it doesn't, but because everyone is suffering equally. Shared misery is its own kind of bonding. You exchange glances around the table, silently acknowledging, yes, this is awful. Yes, we're eating it anyway. Yes, we're still here. Toward the end of the day, when the candles dim and the shelter grows quiet, your stomach rumbles ominously, warning you of tomorrow's continued struggle. You place a hand over your midsection and whisper a gentle plea for mercy. Because in the 1950s fallout shelter, the real battle isn't nuclear, it's digestive, and victory is never guaranteed. Living in a fallout shelter means existing inches away from everyone you love and are now growing to resent. Privacy becomes mythical. Every cough, every sigh, every footstep is communal property. It's like living inside a family-sized thermos. The first thing you notice is how loud everyone suddenly is. Not because they're actually speaking loudly, no, that would take energy everyone lost in week 1, but because sound has nowhere to go. Voices bounce off the curved metal walls like overly friendly boomerangs. Someone clears their throat on the opposite end of the shelter, and it vibrates through your spine like they're whispering directly into your ear. You try to carve out some personal space, but there is none. Zero. If you extend your legs while sitting, you immediately touch another person's legs. If you stretch your arms, you smack the ventilation duct. If you lie down on your bunk and scoot even 1 inch to the right, you risk falling off and landing on someone's stomach. Every movement is a community event. Even visual privacy disappears. You can't turn your head without accidentally making prolonged eye contact with someone. The bunk beds are packed so tightly that rolling over is considered an act of aggression. Your father claims the top bunk, but every time he shifts, the entire structure creaks like the death rattle of a haunted ship. The children hog the middle bunks, building little forts out of blankets that provide psychological privacy, but absolutely no real concealment. Your mother has perfected the art of staring directly at the floor to avoid acknowledging how close everyone is. And, oh, the smells. Not bad smells, well, not always bad smells, but intimate ones. Toothpaste breath, sleepy morning breath, human warm skin smell, someone's hair lotion, someone else's foot odour. They all merge into a perfume called "We're in this together whether you like it or not." Personal scent used to be a charming quirk. Now it's a territorial marker. The noise doesn't help. There are no quiet habits underground. Every sound is amplified. Sniffling, throat clearing, the rustle of someone adjusting their blanket, the click-click-click of fingernails tapping on metal, Uncle Harold's nighttime snoring, An unholy combination of a lawnmower, a distant foghorn, and a man at war with his own sinuses becomes a nightly obstacle to sanity. You attempt to drown him out by pressing your pillow over your ears. It doesn't work. Nothing works. You miss the luxury of solitude, of closing a door, walking into another room, or even standing in a hallway alone. Here, the closest thing to privacy is facing a wall and pretending nobody else exists. You try that one morning. You stand facing the metal surface, nose nearly touching it, and breathe. It doesn't help. You can still feel eyes on your back. You can still hear someone chewing. People begin inventing imaginary boundaries. "This is my sitting corner," someone says, claiming a 3x3-inch square of floor. "That's my leaning wall," another asserts. "These 15 cubic inches of breathable air belong to me," a third declares dramatically. These boundaries are meaningless, of course. Someone always sits too close. Someone always leans where they shouldn't. Someone always breathes too loudly. But the illusions help. A little. Arguments happen, not because people dislike each other, but because proximity turns tiny annoyances into international disputes. Someone's elbow touches yours. War. Someone hums while sorting canned goods. Betrayal. Someone uses the flashlight for 2 seconds longer than necessary. Criminal offence punishable by dramatic sighing. But there's a flip side too. An unexpected tenderness that comes from forced closeness. When someone has a nightmare, they're surrounded instantly. When someone feels anxious, there are hands nearby to steady them. When the radio delivers news, bad or good, it isn't heard alone. Emotions in the bunker spread like warmth, or like static electricity, or like cold, creeping drafts you can't keep out. You begin to understand why soldiers form tight bonds, why astronauts learn each other's quirks, why submarine crews become families. You don't get to choose your bubble of space down here. You only get to choose how gently you share it. And so, each night, you settle onto your narrow bunk. You listen to the chorus of breathing, some rhythmic, some uneven, all human, and realize that personal space may be gone, obliterated, mythical, but what you have instead is something strange and fragile and unexpectedly comforting. A reminder that even in a cramped fallout shelter, surrounded by bodies and smells and sighs, you're not alone. Nighttime in the bunker is paradoxical. It's silent, but somehow every noise is magnified. Creaking bunks, whispering breaths, the unsettling ping of dripping pipes. Your brain chooses this moment to recall every scary story you've ever heard involving enclosed spaces. You lie there on your narrow bunk, the blanket scratchy against your chin, staring into the kind of darkness that feels too close. It's not true darkness. There's always that faint bulb across the room glowing like a dying firefly, but it's enough to turn every shape into something sinister. A coat hanging on a hook becomes a lurking figure. A stack of canned goods becomes the outline of a crouched intruder. You tell yourself these are normal objects. Your brain replies, "Are they though?" The quiet is what gets you. Not peaceful quiet, not restful quiet. The kind of quiet that presses against your ears, making everything else stand out like a spotlight. You can hear your own heartbeat. You can hear someone swallowing on the other side of the shelter. You can hear the ventilation fan above you groaning like it's trapped in a tragic opera. And then come the micro noises, the nocturnal soundtrack of bunker life. A bunk somewhere shifts, sending a shiver through the entire metal frame. Someone exhales through their nose in a way that sounds suspiciously like a ghost sighing. A child kicks their blanket off with the physical force of a small angry mule. The pipes in the wall ping, ping, ping like they're counting down to something ominous. You try to ignore it. You really do. You shift positions, big mistake. Your mattress responds with a loud crinkle like it's made of giant cornflakes. Someone nearby stirs at the sound, which makes you freeze immediately, terrified of waking them and sparking a chain reaction of restless sleepers whose grumbling will haunt you until dawn. Around you, the breathing chorus continues. Slow breaths from your father. Rapid breaths from your younger sibling. The soft rhythmic snoring of your mother. comforting, until she stops for half a second and your half-awake brain panics because apparently she's forgotten how to breathe. Then she snores again, loudly enough to vibrate your bunk, and you're reminded that no, she's fine and yes, she could probably compete professionally. But the worst offender of the night is your own imagination. It takes the quiet, the closeness, the darkness, and decides this is the perfect moment to bring up every claustrophobic scenario you've ever encountered. Movies about caves, short stories about being buried alive, the time your cousin locked you in a closet as a joke. The irrational part of your mind whispers, what if the door is stuck? What if the hatch never opens? What if we're here forever? The rational part of your mind whispers back, shut up. The irrational part wins. You try counting sheep. You get to 12 before you realise you've pictured them inside the bunker, and now you're worried about livestock ventilation needs on top of your own. You try deep breathing, but every exhale sounds like a wind tunnel in the confined space. Someone across the room coughs. Someone else mumbles in their sleep. Someone's stomach growls so loudly it sounds like a warning. And yet, in the middle of this anxiety symphony, something soft happens. You start to adapt. The noises become familiar, predictable, almost soothing. The creak of the bunk becomes a reminder that your family is close. The ping of the pipes becomes background percussion. The fan's hum is your lullaby, wheezing, uneven, but steady. Even the snores become rhythmic, like a strange off-key orchestra that you can't help but accept. Eventually your eyelids grow heavy. The darkness becomes softer, less threatening. Your thoughts slow down, drifting from fear to boredom to vague comfort. A final drip from the pipes echoes gently. A quiet shuffle from a nearby bunk. Someone murmurs something unintelligible and peaceful. And finally, miraculously, you sleep. Not deeply, not elegantly, not without occasional panicked half wake-ups, but enough. Enough to make the morning feel like victory. Because in the bunker, sleep isn't just rest, it's rebellion against fear. A reminder that even in the loudest silence, your body finds a way to carry on. There's no shower, there's barely water. You clean yourself with a damp rag and a prayer. After a week, everyone's hair gains a new texture, best described as Cold War crunchy. Hygiene, once a normal, manageable part of daily life, becomes an abstract concept underground. Something you remember fondly, like sunshine or personal space. On the surface, you are a functioning human who bathed regularly. Down here, you're a damp rag gremlin hoping no one can smell your thoughts. Your morning routine now begins with negotiating over who gets first access to the washing basin, which is really just a dented metal bowl perched on a crate. The water inside is rationed to the milliliter. You dip your rag into the lukewarm, possibly haunted liquid and wring it out carefully, as if performing a delicate medical procedure rather than simply washing your face. The rag itself is a problem. It used to be white. Now it's a colour that defies classification, somewhere between bunker grey and emotional exhaustion. It smells vaguely of mildew and powdered eggs, and you try very hard not to think about the fact that everyone else uses it too. You dab your face, you swipe your neck, you pat your armpits, hoping friction doesn't cause a spark. The result is fine, not clean, not refreshed, just less terrible than before. Hair, however, is a catastrophe. Without shampoo, conditioner or hope, your hair begins transforming into a new entity. It stiffens, it rebels, it clumps into architectural shapes that defy gravity. One morning you wake up and your bangs have formed what can only be described as a Cold War commemorative sculpture. You run your fingers through it. You regret that instantly. Everyone else's hair follows suit. Your father's once neat part has dissolved into an unruly wave that makes him look like he's been battling ocean storms. Your mother's curls have unified into a single powerful mass with a personality. The children's hair stands on end like they've been electrocuted, which honestly would require more electricity than the bunker currently possesses. Smell becomes a sensitive topic. No one mentions it directly, but everyone is suddenly very aware of airflow patterns. You find yourself subtly adjusting your position in conversations based on who last used the communal toilet or who has entered the "I can smell your scalp" phase of hygiene decay. People start avoiding lifting their arms. Someone ties a scarf around their neck in a misguided attempt to appear clean. It does not work. Clothes, already worn daily due to lack of laundry options, begin absorbing bunker odours like sponges. By day 5, your shirts hold more secrets than a spy agency. By day 10, they can stand up on their own. By day 14, you are convinced they have become sentient. Attempts at deodorizing the space fail spectacularly. Someone tries sprinkling baking soda around. It just makes the bunker smell like stale biscuits. Someone else lights a match after using the toilet. This nearly ends the ventilation fan's life. A third person waves a handkerchief scented with lavender oil, but the handkerchief contains about 1 molecule of lavender and 17 years of dust. Brushing your teeth becomes a spiritual exercise. Toothpaste is rationed. Water is rationed. You brush carefully, thinking about the good old days when you could spit freely like a wealthy aristocrat. Down here you spit into a dedicated cup that gets emptied once a day by whoever lost the rock, paper, scissors of fate. Despite all this, something surprising happens. You start adapting. Humans are strangely tolerant creatures. After a week, the bunker smell becomes background noise. After 2 weeks, you stop caring if your hair looks like a pine cone. After 3 weeks, you high-five someone for wiping their face with a clean corner of the towel. And the strangest part? You grow closer to the people around you, not physically, please, no more physical closeness, but emotionally. Everyone is dealing with the same grime, the same sweat, the same desperate yearning for soap. The shared helplessness creates a weird sense of camaraderie. You stop seeing each other as smelly humans trapped in a bunker and start seeing each other as survivors of a long, difficult, deodorant-free pilgrimage. Because down here, hygiene isn't about being clean. It's about trying to stay human, trying to stay sane, trying to face another day with dignity, even if your hair could probably cut through steel by now. Your fantasies become vivid. You imagine a gentle breeze that doesn't smell like canned ham, grass, birds, even traffic jams, anything but artificial light and your uncle's feet. It's astonishing how quickly the human mind begins to romanticize literally anything it no longer has access to. On the surface, sunlight was something you complained about when it hit your bedroom window too early. Grass was something you mowed begrudgingly. Birds were creatures you occasionally glared at for chirping too enthusiastically on weekends. But now, in the bunker, these things feel mythical, holy, like relics from a time before everything smelled faintly of extended family and rationed stew. You lie awake, eyes pressed shut, letting your imagination stretch itself out like a cat waking from a long nap. You picture sunlight, not the harsh overhead bulb pretending to be sunlight, but the real thing, warm, golden, soft-edged. You imagine it landing on your skin, gently reminding your body it was once a creature that existed outdoors and not in a glorified metal shoebox. You can almost feel the vitamin D soaking into your bones like a divine blessing. In your fantasy, you stand barefoot on grass. Real grass. Cool, springy, alive. Not concrete, not steel. Not the gritty bunker floor sprinkled with crumbs that no one wants to admit came from last night's powdered potatoes. You wiggle your toes and imagine individual blades of grass brushing against them. The thought alone is enough to bring a tear to your eye. You picture a breeze, light, fresh, scented with pine or rain or even mild pollution. Honestly, you take the smell of diesel exhaust at this point. Anything is better than the bunker's signature aroma. A blend of humidity, human fatigue, and that stew your uncle reheated 3 times. Your senses wander further. Birds, the soft flutter of wings, the cheerful chaos of morning calls. Even the screech of a crow sounds like a love song in your memories. You recall watching birds hopping across sidewalks, completely free and unbothered by global tensions or limited toilet paper. You used to find this mundane. Now it feels like luxury. Then your mind turns to everyday annoyances you once despised. Traffic jams, barking dogs, leaf blowers, neighbours arguing about hedge height. You long for these sounds the way poets long for lost lovers, the predictability, the variety, the way silence wasn't absolute, the way noise came from a world full of life instead of a sealed container filled with slow simmering panic. In the bunker, even dreams feel starved for sensory input. You picture grocery stores with aisles that stretch farther than 8 feet. You imagine touching fruit that hasn't been suspended in syrup for 2 decades. You fantasize about showers, water cascading over your skin like redemption itself. You picture a towel that smells like detergent instead of bunker musk. And food, oh, the indulgent things your brain conjures. Burgers with fresh lettuce, toast made from bread that didn't begin as powder, ice cream so cold it hurts your teeth. You close your eyes and let these forbidden images drift like delicious hallucinations. But as your fantasy deepens, a strange emotional ache creeps in, longing mixed with a quiet sort of grief. Because the more vividly you imagine sunlight, the more aware you become of the buzzing bulb overhead. The more you imagine a breeze, the more noticeable the stale bunker air becomes. The more you imagine grass beneath your feet, the more your toes curl in protest at the cold metal bed frame. Still, you lean into the daydream because it does something important. It reminds you that the outside world exists, even if you can't see it. It reminds you that life once included colour, texture, and the smell of rain on pavement. It reminds you that you're not meant to live underground forever. And when the daydream finally dissolves, as all fantasies do, you open your eyes to the dim light, the cramped space, and the unmistakable scent of stew drifting in from somewhere entirely too close. But now, at least, you have something to look forward to, something to hope for, something to dream of again tomorrow night, when the lights go out and your world shrinks but your imagination refuses to. People get weird underground. Suddenly you're discussing who would be eaten first if it came to that. Someone confesses a lifelong fear of mannequins. Another person starts a feud over a misplaced can opener. Sanity melts like butter on a hot pavement. It begins slowly, little cracks in the social veneer. Day 1, everyone is polite, optimistic, chatty, in a strained, we're totally fine way. Day 3, people are already whispering about whose snoring qualifies as a war crime. By week 2, the bunkers become a psychological terrarium, and every emotional quirk that once hid politely beneath the surface now blossoms like a mushroom in a damp basement. The conversations take on a surreal quality, floating somewhere between philosophical, deranged, and profoundly unnecessary. Breakfast is barely underway before someone casually brings up cannibalism, not seriously, but seriously enough to spark worry. The debate escalates with shocking speed, complete with charts drawn on napkins and someone nominating Uncle Harold because he's the most seasoned. You sip your orange beverage and stare at the wall, reconsidering every life choice that brought you here. Then there are the confessions. Nothing bonds people like mutual captivity. Secrets spill out like expired canned goods. Your cousin reveals they're terrified of mannequins. Not just scared, terrified. They go into detail. Too much detail. Everyone stares, unsure how to comfort them without accidentally summoning the mental image of a glowing nuclear mannequin army. Your mother admits she once backed into another car at the grocery store and drove away because she panicked. Your father confesses he doesn't actually know how to play poker and has been bluffing both emotionally and strategically for years. A child reveals that they broke a lamp back home and blamed it on the wind, and honestly you respect the creativity. Meanwhile, tension swirls around the can opener incident, a feud now entering its 5th day. Someone moved the can opener. Someone else denies touching it. Someone else insists they last saw it near the radio. Sides form. Alliances strengthen. Whisper networks emerge. At one point, someone suggests holding a trial. The can opener is eventually found behind a stack of powdered milk, but by then the social fabric has already frayed like a cheap sweater. You start noticing quirks you never knew existed. One person narrates everything they do in a low monotone, another begins hoarding the good spoons. Someone else refuses to sit on any chair that isn't emotionally comfortable, whatever that means in a steel bunker. You'd laugh if you weren't too busy having your own crisis, which mostly involves wondering whether it's normal to cry because you miss fresh air, or because someone keeps humming the same 3 notes on loop. Nighttime breeds the strangest conversations of all. The bunker gets quieter, the lights softer, and suddenly everyone becomes reflective. You talk about hypothetical futures, far-fetched dreams about restaurants, beaches, and not having to dodge falling ceiling dust. You talk about childhood memories, forgotten crushes, holidays that feel 1,000 years away. People become philosophers in the worst lighting imaginable. Once, during a particularly delirious conversation, someone asked, "Do you think pigeons know about the Cold War?" This led to a 30-minute debate that included diagrams, interpretive gestures, and the phrase feathered espionage. No one slept well after that, but not every conversation is bizarre or alarming. Some are unexpectedly sweet. People reminisce about birthdays, favourite meals, warm summer evenings. They talk about what they'll do when the hatch opens again. Simple things, like stretching in real sunlight, or breathing air that hasn't been circulated 60 times. These soft moments become emotional lifelines, brief reminders that the world still exists, even if you can't see it. Still, the weird persists. It always does. Isolation magnifies the human mind like a funhouse mirror, warping, stretching, twisting thoughts into new shapes. Sometimes funny, sometimes unsettling, sometimes both. But through it all, one thing becomes clear. Conversation is survival. Words are the currency keeping everyone sane enough to endure another day underground. Whether you're discussing nightmare mannequins, future feasts, missing can openers, or birds with diplomatic immunity, just talking, keeps the walls from closing in entirely. Because in the fallout shelter, silence isn't peaceful. Silence is dangerous. And a slightly unhinged conversation is far preferable to the sound of your own thoughts echoing in the dark. A small drip begins in the concrete overhead. Everyone stares at it, pretending it's nothing. But deep down they know. Water shouldn't be inside the bunker, and yet, here it is. A tiny reminder that the world outside is rude, and physics doesn't care about your survival. You watch as the droplet forms slowly, gathering mass, contemplating its existence like a philosophical tear. Then, plop. It lands in a small puddle on the floor with the softest, most morale-destroying sound imaginable. A sound that whispers, "Good luck down here, friends. Hope you weren't relying on structural integrity today." At first, everyone tries to cope the way bunker people cope, with denial. It's just condensation, someone says, even though the ceiling is supposed to be waterproof. Probably nothing, your father mutters, though his eye twitches suspiciously. Happens all the time, Uncle Harold claims confidently, despite having no evidence or engineering training. So the drip continues, steady, patient, mocking. You place a pot under it to catch the water, which feels both responsible and humiliating. A fallout shelter should feel imposing, sturdy, like it's capable of shielding you from the apocalypse. But there's something deeply embarrassing about huddling under a concrete dome while it leaks like a discount apartment ceiling. The drip becomes the bunker's new ticking clock. Every plop is another reminder that morale is as fragile as the roof apparently is. The sound interrupts meals, prayers, naps, conversations, and attempts to pretend life is normal. The bunker has always had a gentle hum from the ventilation fan, the occasional rattle from pipes, the chorus of irritated family members. But now there's a new soundtrack, plop, 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 a calm and steady chorus of despair. Some people ignore it, some people can't. You fall into the latter category, watching it obsessively like it's a countdown timer. If the drip ever becomes a stream, then congratulations, you've upgraded from fallout shelter to indoor waterfall experience with emotional trauma included. Morale meetings begin. These are entirely informal and mostly involve people trying very hard to sound confident. It's fine, someone insists. A little water never hurt anyone. You all stare blankly at the very concept of water, remembering that it's the same substance the government warned you could carry radioactive fallout. Yes, water can hurt people. Profoundly. Someone suggests moving the bunks away from the leak. Someone else suggests plugging it with chewing gum. A third person, probably your father, suggests leaving it alone because touching it might encourage it. This is how you know you've been underground too long. You're now talking about water like it has feelings. One of the kids names the leak Drippy. This does not help morale, but it does make Drippy seem less threatening, which is something. Attempts are made to distract everyone. Your mother starts a sing-along. It lasts 3 minutes. Drippy drips off beat. Your grandfather tells stories from his youth. Drippy adds sad percussion. Someone plays cards, but the only thing anyone can focus on is whether the leak looks bigger today. Finally, someone brave, or perhaps just exhausted, decides it's time to actually inspect the ceiling. This requires standing on a chair and poking gently at the concrete with a flashlight. Everyone watches with the same nervous energy people have when observing bomb disposal. The ceiling, insulted by the intrusion, releases another droplet in retaliation. Well, the inspector says weakly, it's definitely leaking. This, of course, was already obvious, but hearing it confirmed out loud sends a ripple of anxiety across the room. People begin to speculate wildly. Is the rebar rusting? Is groundwater seeping through? Is the outside world slowly trying to reclaim you like a basement nobody asked for? Your job becomes trying to keep morale afloat, which feels ironic under the circumstances. You reassure people. You say things like, at least it's not dripping on anyone's pillow, or maybe it's filtered, or the ever-dependable could be worse. And strangely, despite the chaos, morale does begin to recover. Not because of optimism, but because humans adapt. Even to leaks, even to concrete betrayal. Drippy becomes the bunker pet. Someone draws eyes on the pot. Someone else makes up a song about it. The situation evolves from terrifying to mildly annoying. By nightfall, the drip is still there, but so are you, so is everyone else. And although the ceiling may be questionable, your determination is not. Because in a fallout shelter, morale isn't about ignoring the danger. It's about refusing to let a little water and a lot of fear convince you the sky is about to fall in. You attempt exercise, walking small laps that make hamsters look like marathoners. After 3 minutes, you're exhausted, not physically, but spiritually. Because there's something deeply demoralizing about power walking beside canned chili. There is no gym in the bunker, no treadmill, no weights, no yoga mat. Your workout equipment consists of your own body, a floor slightly sticky from spilled reconstituted milk, and the emotional weight of living underground. So you improvise. Sort of. Your morning exercise routine begins with pacing. You start at one end of the bunker, approximately 4 steps from the other end, and begin your loop. Step, step, pivot. Step, step. Try not to step on a child's toy. Step, step. Avoid the puddle created by Drippy the ceiling leak. You repeat this until your brain starts questioning why humans ever evolved legs in the first place. The pacing is meant to relieve stress, but somehow it creates new stress. With each turn, you're confronted by the same scenery. The shelf of canned beans staring back at you judgmentally, the ventilation fan wheezing like a walrus with seasonal allergies, the bunk bed that groans ominously no matter who's on it. It's like exercising inside a diorama of despair. Someone suggests stretching. Great idea until you lift your arms and immediately hit a pipe. You try again, slower, and manage a full stretch before your hand brushes against the ceiling, sending down a puff of dust that settles into your hair like ancient confetti. You tell yourself dust is good resistance training for the lungs. Then there's calisthenics. You attempt jumping jacks, but quickly realise the ceiling sits at a height designed specifically to crush your ambitions. You modify the movement, doing sad, low-impact mini-jacks that look like you're trying to scare away an imaginary raccoon with your elbows. It's not dignified, but neither is anything else down here. Push-ups. Possible, but only if you can ignore the cold metal floor and the immediate sensation that someone, somewhere, is watching. Because in the bunker, someone is always watching. Personal space isn't a concept, it's a myth. You lower yourself toward the ground, trying not to think about the fact that this spot on the floor smells like feet, soup, and emotional collapse, and then push back up with a grunt that startles the nearest family member. Sit-ups aren't much better. The floor presses into your spine like it's judging your core strength. Halfway through your first sit-up, you accidentally lock eyes with someone across the room. Neither of you breaks the gaze. It is the most uncomfortable moment of your life. The children, of course, handle bunker exercise differently. They sprint through the narrow walkway like caffeinated squirrels. They invent games called things like Don't Touch the Fallout and Ventilation Tag, where the loser is whoever gets hit by a gust of stale air. Their energy is boundless, unstoppable, and deeply unfair. Your uncle tries leading a calisthenics class once. He stands in the corner and announces Cold War cardio. Everyone gathers. He proceeds to demonstrate a move he calls the nuclear duck and cover, which is just crouching repeatedly behind a chair. After 2 minutes, he is winded. After 3, someone declares the exercise unsafe for morale. Class dismissed. Yoga is briefly attempted. You remember a few poses from magazines. Child's pose, downward dog, something involving balancing on one leg. But the bunker is not conducive to quiet mindfulness. Halfway through a pose, the ventilation fan makes a startling clunk, and you lose your balance, knocking over a stack of canned potatoes. Everyone looks at you like you've committed a federal crime. Eventually you settle into the only workout that truly works underground. Anxiety pacing, short, repetitive, and powered by the nervous energy of not knowing whether the outside world is thriving, smouldering, or both. You walk in circles, you mutter to yourself, you count ceiling bolts, you track your steps even though each lap is barely 8 feet. And yet, somehow it helps. Not in a physical fitness sense. No, your muscles are slowly turning into cooked noodles. But in the mental sense, pacing quiets your mind. It gives you something to do when your thoughts begin spiraling. It becomes a rhythm, a routine, a small way to say, I'm still here, I'm still moving. By the end of your session, you're sweaty, tired in your soul, and slightly dizzy from turning in the same spot 50 times, but also lighter, calmer, a little more anchored. Because in a fallout shelter, exercise isn't about strength or cardio or flexibility. It's about staying one lap ahead of losing your mind. The radio crackles to life, offering updates that range from mildly encouraging to deeply unhelpful. Occasionally you catch a song, reminding you that music once played in places bigger than a walk-in closet. The radio is your last fragile tether to the outside world. A clunky metal box with knobs that feel like they were designed to be turned only with the strength of a minor deity. It sits on a crate in the corner like a sacred relic. People approach it reverently, adjusting the dials with the delicate touch of someone defusing a bomb, which in a sense they are, because if the radio breaks, morale will combust instantly. When the first crackle sounds, everyone freezes. Children stop mid-sentence. Adults stop mid-breakdown. Even Uncle Harold lowers his finger, which he had raised dramatically to make a point. All eyes turn to the box as if it has just spoken the secret of life. What follows is static. Glorious, loud, gravelly static. Normally, this sound would be annoying. But down here, static means the radio is on. Static means the outside world hasn't fully evaporated. Static is hope. Abrasive, ugly hope. You lean closer. The static shifts. A faint voice emerges, warbling like someone broadcasting through a mud puddle. You can't make out words yet, but you hear tone, serious, urgent, vaguely bureaucratic. It might be a news bulletin. It might be a farm report. It might be a commercial for laundry detergent. All are equally thrilling. Then clarity hits, just for a moment. Conditions remain uncertain. Stay indoors, authorities advise. The rest dissolves again into static. Your father nods solemnly, as though this non-update has confirmed all his suspicions. Your mother clasps her hands, relieved simply to hear a human voice that isn't complaining about the toilet. Your siblings groan because none of this information answers their most pressing question. When do we get to leave? Then comes the music. A single, wavering note glides through the static like a lighthouse beam through fog. Someone gasps. Someone else whispers, "It's a song." You sit closer, waiting to see what the universe has chosen for your emotional realignment today. It turns out to be a cheerful 1950s jingle about refrigerators. No one speaks for 30 seconds. Then your grandfather claps once, loudly, and declares it a good sign, though no one knows why. You choose to believe him, because at this point, refrigerator jingles qualify as spiritual guidance. But just as you begin tapping your foot, the music fades into white noise again, replaced by a harsh buzzing that sounds like bees trapped in a metal bucket. The radio trembles on the crate. The fan wheezes overhead. Anxiety prickles your spine. Someone instinctively reaches for the radio dial, fiddling, turning, twisting, hoping to realign the universe through sheer force of knob rotation. The static shifts into something new, something worse. A faint whistle. A ghostly hum. The bunker collectively holds its breath. Finally, mercifully, a voice returns. Repeat situation, stable, remain calm. You cling to these words like they're oxygen. Are they accurate? Unclear. Have they been broadcast recently or 30 hours ago? No idea. Does anyone care? Absolutely not. The radio said stable. That is enough to keep everyone functioning for another day. The updates continue sporadically. Short bursts of language drowned beneath waves of static. A weather report that feels mocking considering you haven't seen the sky in weeks. A patriotic speech, muffled and distorted, making the speaker sound like a determined frog. One strange broadcast that turns out to be a baseball game recorded years earlier, but everyone listens anyway because the sound of a cheering crowd feels like pure luxury. Over time, the radio becomes the bunker's emotional barometer. If the static is soft, people relax. If the signal grows strong, people dare to hope. If the radio is silent for more than a minute, panic blooms instantly. You've never known an object to have so much power over human spirits. It is temperamental, fickle, occasionally insulting, but it is connection. A reminder that, above your concrete cocoon, the world continues to spin. Maybe slowly, maybe dangerously, but still spinning. Late at night, when most people have drifted off to uneasy sleep, you sit by the radio. You listen to the hum, the crackles, the flickers of sound. And for a moment, just a moment, it feels like you are part of something larger than four metal walls and a ventilation fan begging for retirement. Static or not, the radio speaks, and you listen. Because in the bunker, hope doesn't shout. It crackles. Kids adapt quickly. Too quickly. Within days, they've invented games like Who Can Scream the Quietest and Let's Touch the Emergency Supplies. When no one's looking, their energy expands. The bunker does not. The first thing you notice is that the children have no respect for the emotional fragility of adults in confined spaces. They thrive in chaos. They feed on it. Within 48 hours of entering the bunker, their bodies have fully recalibrated to subterranean life. They zip through the narrow aisles like caffeinated fireflies, leaving behind a trail of crumbs, crayons, and existential dread. Their drawings begin to take over the walls. Not charming drawings either. Strange ones. Abstract scribbles that look suspiciously like maps to an underground kingdom only they understand. Portraits of the ventilation fan with halos drawn over it, as though they've designated it some kind of bunker deity. A picture of what might be a smiling mushroom cloud, or possibly a horse. Hard to tell. Crayon lines everywhere, turning cold concrete into a chaotic kindergarten art gallery. Their games become the soundtrack of your suffering. Who can scream the quietest is not quiet. The rules are unclear, but apparently no one wins unless an adult begs them to stop. Then there's let's touch the emergency supplies. When no one's looking, a game so dangerous it might actually violate national security. You catch two kids poking at the Geiger counter with a stick they smuggled in from the surface. Where did they get a stick? No one knows. You fear the stick. Their imaginations soar in direct proportion to your dwindling patience. They rename the bunks. Top bunk becomes Castle Sky Kingdom, while the lower bunks become the caves of eternal darkness. They crawl beneath them like goblins, popping out unexpectedly to whisper things like, "Do you know where the beans live?" Or I saw the ceiling blink. Outside of the bunker, children run around playgrounds. Inside the bunker, the entire world is the playground. Every surface, every object, every adult who foolishly sits down becomes a mountain to climb. Every can becomes a drum. Every pot lid becomes a cymbal. Every silence becomes an invitation to make noise. Their energy is relentless, limitless, and absolutely incompatible with life inside a metal tube the size of a respectable pantry. Attempts to entertain them generally fail. You give them crayons, they eat one. You give them a colouring book, they colour the walls instead. You give them a puzzle, they lose 4 pieces instantly and insist the puzzle is haunted. You try teaching them cards, they use the cards as currency to start a makeshift black market. Bedtime is a myth, a rumour, a wistful dream from a bygone era. The bunker clock says it's late, but the children's bodies say it's time to sprint in circles until someone cries. You gently explain that everyone needs rest. They nod politely, then begin a game called Let's Jump from the Bunk and hope Mom doesn't notice. At one point your mother tries to enforce quiet time. She gathers the children, speaks softly, and reminds them that everyone needs a moment of peace. They stare at her with deep, unblinking innocence, then instantly erupt into a dramatic reenactment of a cowboy shootout. Your mother returns to her cot and stares at the ceiling like she's questioning all her choices. Yet, in the chaos, something sweet exists too. The children draw pictures of home, sunlight, trees, pets left behind. They ask when they'll get to play outside again. Their tiny voices tremble just a little. They cling to stuffed animals worn smooth by anxious hands. And in those moments, the bunker feels less like a prison and more like a temporary cocoon. You watch them as they fall asleep in a tangled heap, their crayons scattered like relics of a tiny civilization. The bunker becomes quiet for the first time all day. You can hear your own breath. The stillness is profound. And you realise something important. The children aren't feral because they're wild. They're feral because they're surviving, coping with cramped corners, stale air, and fears too big for their bodies to hold. Their chaos is resilience. Their noise is hope refusing to be quiet. Their energy is proof that even underground, life keeps finding ways to grow, even if it sometimes grows into a crayon-covered emergency supply tampering blur of small, unstoppable humans. Hunger changes people. You've never understood diplomacy until you've watched 2 grown adults engage in tense negotiations over a single can of syrupy fruit. Everyone knows peaches are currency. Food has power down here, real power. Canned goods become more than sustenance. They become hope in tangible form, and nothing holds more value, prestige, or emotional sway than peaches. Sweet, soft, sun-drenched peaches suspended in golden syrup. They're not just fruit, they're morale in a can, happiness in storage form, a memory of summer trapped in metal. So when the final can of peaches surfaces, it's not just a discovery, it's an international incident. It begins innocently enough. Someone rummages behind a stack of canned potatoes and gasps dramatically. The bunker goes silent, heads turn. People rise from their bunks like zombies with purpose. There, Held reverently in trembling hands is the unmistakable glint of a peach label. It might as well be the Holy Grail. Immediately alliances form, claims are staked, arguments rise faster than bread in a working oven, something you haven't seen in weeks. "I found it," the discoverer announces proudly. "Yes, but I reorganized the shelves last week," someone else counters. "I haven't tasted fruit in 17 days, whispers a third, placing their hand gently on their chest as if auditioning for a tragedy. Your grandfather, who has survived multiple world crises already, steps forward with surprising ferocity. Peaches should go to the eldest, he declares, invoking an unwritten rule he just made up. Meanwhile, two siblings argue quietly about whether who cried most last night should be considered. Your father suggests rationing. "We can split it 8 ways, he says, noble and naive. The bunker reacts with the collective horror of a room full of people who know what 1/8 of a peach looks like. It looks like nothing. It looks like insult. Someone proposes trading favours for the peaches. "I'll wash dishes." There are no dishes. "I'll sweep the floor. The floor is concrete. I'll tell you the secret ending of the book I'm reading. You've already spoiled it twice." Negotiations escalate. People begin offering items of personal value, which says a lot about bunker life, because none of the items are actually valuable. "I'll trade you my only working pen. I'll trade my lucky sock. I'll give you my top bunk spot for 2 nights. Someone gasps. That's too far. Eventually a council forms, an actual council, because the stakes are now too high for casual debate. The council consists of your mother, the voice of reason, your grandfather, the voice of chaos, and Uncle Harold, the self-appointed Minister of Peach Affairs. The meeting is tense. Proposals are drafted, amendments are made. A formal peach distribution charter begins circulating, written in pencil because ink is too precious to waste on politics. Finally, a solution emerges, a shared peach ceremony. Everyone gathers solemnly. The can opener is handed over like a ritual object. The lid is removed with the reverence of unveiling a priceless artifact. The smell hits first: sunshine, sugar, childhood memories. People close their eyes just to savour the aroma. The peaches are ladled out carefully, slowly, dramatically. Everyone receives a portion, not equal, but fair enough to prevent mutiny. Some get a full slice, some get half, some get syrup alone, sipping it with the reverent joy of monks tasting holy nectar. As you take your bite, everything stops. The bunker fades. The stale air disappears. The stress melts. For one perfect moment, all you taste is sweetness. Real sweetness. Not powdered, not rationed, not chemically approximated. The flavour feels like a message from the surface world saying, hang on, life is still out here. And in that tiny moment of unity, peach juice dripping down chins, the bunker feels almost peaceful, almost normal, almost human again. Then someone whispers, "Hey, do we have any pears left?" And the cycle begins anew. Every bunker eventually develops one, a spot where people go to stare at the wall and contemplate life, destiny, and whether they should have been nicer to the milkman. It forms organically. No one designates it. No one assigns chairs or posts signage. It simply becomes, through repeated visits, heavy sighs, and the quiet shuffle of feet dragging across concrete. One day, it's just an empty section of a wall. The next, it's a sacred emotional dumping ground, a sanctuary for the weary, a psychological timeout chair for adults who are 5 minutes from unravelling. The corner gains its reputation slowly. First, one person goes there to sit alone, then another. Soon the pattern is undeniable. Whenever someone needs a moment to collect themselves, or lose themselves, they drift toward that exact spot like moths to a very depressing flame. You find yourself pulled there one afternoon, carrying the weight of too many canned beans, too little sleep, and the sudden realization that you can't remember what clouds look like. The moment you sit down, the wall becomes magnetic. It's cold. Blank stare matches your internal void perfectly. You settle in, knees pulled to your chest, and begin the mental spiral familiar to all bunker residents. How long have we been down here? Do I even remember what day it is? Does sunlight feel the same on your skin as it does in dreams? Why did I once spend actual money on scented candles when fresh air was free? Should I have told my neighbour I borrowed their hooze in 1955 and never returned it? Someone shuffles past and nods at you respectfully. No words needed. You're in the corner. They understand. You're safe to unravel here. Soon, the corner develops its own rules, unspoken but universally respected. Rule 1. No talking. Conversations ruin the vibe. Rule 2. You may sit for as long as you need, but if you start sobbing loudly, someone will gently escort you to the chemical toilet for privacy. Rule 3. Anyone who enters with food must share or leave immediately. Nobody wants to contemplate the universe to the smell of heated spam. Rule 4. You do not acknowledge each other's breakdowns outside the corner. What happens in the emotional void stays in the emotional void. The wall becomes strangely comforting. You begin noticing tiny details. A crack shaped like Florida, a discoloration that looks like a screaming potato, a bump that your brain decides resembles the Virgin Mary holding a can opener. The human mind is creative when stressed. Over time, the corner becomes a community resource. Someone adds a folded blanket for softer sitting. Someone else places the one good flashlight above it so people can stare at the wall dramatically like tortured poets. A child leaves a crayon drawing of a smiling sun taped to the concrete, an act both sweet and emotionally devastating. Occasionally, two people end up in the corner at the same time. These pairings are beautiful and deeply awkward. You sit together, pretending the other person is invisible, each staring into your own personal abyss. You shift slightly to avoid touching knees. You breathe quietly. You process life separately yet together. It's the bunker equivalent of a group therapy session run entirely by silence and proximity. Not all visits are sad, though. Some are reflective. You think about home, your real home, not this metal masquerading as shelter. You imagine sitting at a kitchen table with warm coffee. You imagine the sound of rain hitting a roof instead of concrete dust drifting from overhead pipes. You imagine your old problems, taxes, work, noisy neighbours, and laugh at how luxurious they suddenly seem. The corner allows you to grieve your old life while believing just barely in the possibility of a new one someday. And strangely, after your allotted time of wall contemplation, you always feel a little better, not fixed, not healed, but steadier, more grounded, ready to eat another questionable meal and endure another round of bunker monopoly. When you rise and leave, someone else quietly takes your place. They sit, they stare, they sigh, and the corner continues its sacred duty, helping humans survive the end of the world one existential crisis at a time. It happens. Someone tries optimism. Someone decides to look on the bright side. The entire bunker population responds with exhausted, unblinking horror. There is no bright side, there is only canned vegetables. The moment arrives unexpectedly during one of your many identical afternoons. Everyone is slumped around the bunker in various stages of existential wilt when a voice, chirpy, refreshed, borderline cheerful, breaks the stagnant air. Well, they say, hands clasped together like a motivational speaker, maybe this isn't so bad. Time freezes. The ventilation fan hesitates mid-wheeze. A faraway can settles ominously. Every head turns in slow motion to stare at the speaker, who instantly realizes they have committed a social felony. Nobody in the bunker wants to hear optimism. Optimism is dangerous. It implies acceptance. It suggests someone has adapted to bunker life in a way that is psychologically suspicious. And worst of all, it threatens the delicate ecosystem of shared misery that keeps the group emotionally bonded. You watch the cheerful offender shrink beneath the collective glare, their smile faltering like a candle in a hurricane. What part, someone asks flatly, is not so bad? They blink. Well, we're safe, aren't we? A chorus of snorts, groans, and muffled swearing fills the room. Safe? Safe? Nobody feels safe. Safety evaporated somewhere between the powdered milk and the discovery of Drippy the ceiling leak. The bunker erupts, not loudly, but with the quiet fury of people whose hope has been held together with duct tape and denial. Oh sure, someone mutters, it's great down here. Love sleeping on a mattress made of wire and sorrow. Another adds, yes, nothing says luxury like recycled air and toilet curtains. Your grandfather chimes in with, in 1932, optimism got a man punched, which seems unrelated but somehow still relevant. The optimistic person attempts a backpedal. I just meant we're all together. This makes it worse. Much worse. Being all together is the exact problem. If anyone upstairs ever wonders how humans descend into madness, all they have to do is observe a family forced to cohabitate 24 hours a day in a bunker the size of a 2-car garage. Togetherness in this context is not comforting. It's a threat. Your sibling leans forward, elbows on knees, eyes wide with sleep-deprived intensity. Do you like being trapped? Your mother folds her arms. Would you prefer staying down here indefinitely? Even Uncle Harold stops polishing the Geiger counter long enough to glare. This, he says gravely, is how cults start. The optimistic person sputters. No, that's not what I meant. But it's too late. The bunker hunger, the bunker fatigue, the bunker smells, all of it has turned their small spark of positivity into an unforgivable act of treason. To lighten tension, someone suggests the offender must be delusional from sodium intake. Another proposes taking them to the existential crisis corner for re-education. A third quietly asks whether they've been sniffing too much of the emergency glue. Finally, your father intervenes with a weary sigh that carries the weight of 17 sleepless nights. Look, he says gently, we all appreciate the effort, but let's just not. The group nods. This is reasonable. This is fair. This is the new rule now, no optimism without prior written consent. The offender sits down, chastened but alive, their positivity confiscated for the sake of communal sanity. The bunker exhales as one. The natural order has been restored. Funny thing is, later that night you catch the optimist alone beneath the dim light, humming softly while organising the canned goods alphabetically, an act of quiet rebellion, a tiny spark of hope flickering in a metal tomb. And maybe, though you'd never admit it aloud, you're grateful someone down here still remembers what optimism sounds like, even if everyone else is allergic to it. But until the hatch opens again, bunker law is clear. Keep your chin up if you must, but for everyone's sake, keep your voice down. One day, you hear movement at the shelter entrance. Every heart in the bunker stops. It might be rescuers or raccoons or radiation-mutated raccoons. Either way, you clutch your flashlight like a medieval sword. The sound happens once, a single metallic jiggle, but it may as well be the trumpet blast signalling the end of days. Conversations halt mid-sentence. The children freeze mid-chaos. Even the ceiling drip seems to pause out of respect. No one breathes. No one moves. The entire bunker becomes a tableau of fear and stale air. Your father is the first to whisper, "Did you hear that?" Everyone nods, as though the question were rhetorical. Of course you heard it. The bunker magnifies sound like a confession booth for the damned. Another jiggle, very faint, very intentional, not the building settling, not the wind. This is the unmistakable sound of someone or something trying the handle. Uncle Harold leaps into action, which is to say he grabs the broom and holds it like a spear. The children hide behind the canned goods. Your mother clutches the Geiger counter, because apparently in her mind, its clicking might scare intruders away. You creep closer to the hatch, flashlight gripped so tightly it becomes part of your skeletal system. The beam of light wobbles. So does your courage. Someone whispers, "What if it's the government?" Someone else whispers, "What if it's not the government?" Someone else asks, should we negotiate? Negotiate with who? A mutant raccoon? The Cold War has clearly done things to everyone's brain. Your grandfather straightens his spine and declares, "Stand back, I'll handle this." He walks forward with the authority of a man who has survived 2 wars, 3 bad marriages, and 70 years of questionable breakfast cereal. He presses his ear to the metal door. Everyone watches. Silence. Then another noise, a soft scratching, a shuffle, a weight shifting on gravel. Your grandfather steps back and announces solemnly, "It's either a rescuer or an animal, or a rescuer who is also an animal." No one finds this helpful. The family forms a defensive formation that would impress no one. You're all just huddled near the bunks holding random objects, a spoon, a canned ham, a shoe, the broom spear, 3 flashlights, and someone's journal for emotional backup. The handle jiggles again. Harder. Your breathing becomes shallow. Your heart rate becomes a percussion instrument. Your palms are clammy enough to form their own microclimate. You imagine opening the door and being greeted by anything from a friendly face to a radioactive porcupine capable of ending civilization. Then nothing. The handle stops. The sounds cease. The intruder, whatever it was, retreats. Slowly, softly, leaving behind only dread. No one moves for nearly a full minute. Finally someone whispers, "Should we check?" Everyone responds, "No!" at the exact same time with the force of a unified choir. You back away from the hatch, retreating to the centre of the bunker, where the illusion of safety lives. Your father sits down heavily. Your mother keeps clutching the Geiger counter even though it's not relevant. The children re-emerge cautiously, convinced it was a monster. You can't say with certainty that it wasn't. For the next hour, no one speaks above a whisper. Even the usual bickering takes a break. The bunker is too tense, too aware of its vulnerability. Eventually, people begin offering theories. "It was the wind," someone claims optimistically. "There is no wind underground," another replies. "It was a fox," suggests a child. "A fox doesn't jiggle door handles," your father mutters. Your grandfather simply says, "It'll be back," which earns him several glares. Long after the moment passes, the fear lingers. The hatch becomes more than a door. It becomes the thin membrane separating your cramped existence from whatever chaos still thrives outside. And you realize something. Down here, uncertainty is the greatest monster of all. Not radiation, not hunger, not even Uncle Harold's nighttime snoring. It's the not knowing, the possibility, the idea that the world above still moves, still scratches, still jostles handles. And for a brief, terrifying moment, it remembered you were here. When the hatch finally opens, sunlight hits you like a spiritual awakening. Your lungs panic at the taste of authentic oxygen. You take a deep inhale that doesn't smell like beans. You cry. Everyone cries. For a moment, none of you move. You stand frozen at the base of the ladder, squinting upward like you've just witnessed the arrival of a divine being. After so many days spent under buzzing bulbs and recycled breath, sunlight feels wrong, too bright, too warm, too real. Your retinas scream, your brain screams, your heart skips a beat like it's trying to remember how joy works. But you climb anyway. Every rung feels like a pilgrimage. Metal under your palms, knees trembling, breath hitched in anticipation. Your head rises above bunker level and the world explodes into colour. Actual colour. Vivid greens, impossible blues, warm golds, colours that do not exist underground. Colours that make you wonder whether you've been living inside a desaturated film. The air hits you next. A rush of wind carrying scents so unfamiliar you nearly choke on them. Dirt, leaves, pollen, maybe a hint of gasoline. It's intoxicating. Your nostrils flare greedily. Your lungs, accustomed to bunker-flavoured air, try to reject this unfamiliar purity, like a houseplant overwhelmed by direct sunlight. You cough, gasp, then inhale again with the enthusiasm of someone who has never fully appreciated what a fresh breeze can do to the soul. You step onto the surface and the sunlight warms your face, arms, neck, places that haven't felt warmth that didn't come from body heat or canned chili. It feels like being rewired, rebooted, reborn. Goosebumps ripple down your arms, but not from cold, from awe. Behind you others emerge one by one. Your mother clutches her chest dramatically. Your father stares silently at the horizon, jaw slack. The children scream, not in fear, but in unfiltered joy, and immediately begin sprinting, unsure where they're going, but ecstatic to discover they can move more than 4 steps without turning. Your grandfather collapses onto a patch of grass, fingers trembling as he runs them through the blades. He whispers, "I forgot it was soft," and immediately begins crying. Not delicate tears, the loud, unashamed kind usually reserved for weddings and funerals. Someone kneels to touch the ground, someone else hugs a tree. Uncle Harold lies flat on his back, arms spread, inhaling air like he's auditioning for a role as man rediscovering life. You don't judge him. If anything, you join him. Everything feels overstimulating. The breeze is too loud. The birds are too cheerful. The sun is too confident. Even the sky looks smug, an endless stretch of blue mocking you gently, forever doubting it was still there. You breathe again, deeper this time. The air fills your lungs so effortlessly it's almost suspicious. How did you forget this feeling? How did you accept air that tasted like compressed relatives and powdered milk as normal? You close your eyes, tilt your face upward, and let the moment wash through you. Every muscle unclenches, every fear quiets, every sound, wind rustling through trees, insects buzzing, distant traffic, is a reminder that the world didn't vanish while you hid from it. Around you, the atmosphere shifts. Laughter bubbles up, real, relaxed laughter that hasn't been heard in the bunker for days. People hug. People spin in slow circles. People kneel and scoop soil into their hands like they've discovered a new planet. Even the family arguments pause, stunned into silence by nature's overwhelming sensory overload. Eventually someone says, "It's beautiful." Everyone nods, even those still sniffling through tears. It is beautiful. Not because the landscape has changed, but because you have. Bunker life strips away so much comfort, sanity, smells you'll never forget. But it also sharpens your appreciation for the ordinary. Fresh air, real sunlight, open space. Things you once walked past without noticing now feel like miracles. You inhale again, deep and slow. This time, you smile. Because for the first time in what feels like forever, the air tastes like freedom. You step outside and pretend you're fine. You tell neighbours everything was totally normal. You reassure yourself that humanity will never do that again. Then someone says the word civil defence drill and your eye twitches. Re-entry into normal life is stranger than anyone warns you about. People expect you to be grateful, relieved, emotionally renewed. Instead, you feel off, uncalibrated. Like someone shook your internal snow globe and forgot to let the flakes settle. You walk through your front door and everything looks familiar, yet somehow suspicious. The couch seems too soft, the lights too bright, the walls too far apart. You stand in your living room like an alien impersonating a suburban homeowner. Neighbours wave from across the street with cheerful innocence. How was it down there? Oh, you lie. Cozy, productive, strengthened family bonds. Not a word of this is true. But how do you explain the surreal psychology of bunker existence? How do you tell someone you nearly engaged in a can of corn-related uprising? That you once lectured a child about the sanctity of ration discipline while wearing the same shirt for 13 days? That you briefly considered worshipping a ventilation fan? Number. Much simpler to smile and say things like, "We made the best of it." Inside, though, everything has changed. Small, ordinary moments now hit you with emotional whiplash. You open the refrigerator and cry, because everything inside is fresh and not suspended in syrup. You turn on the tap and gasp at the abundance of running water that doesn't taste like metal. You flush a toilet, an actual flushing toilet, and feel the kind of joy poets spend centuries trying to describe. But then come the bunker flashbacks. You hear someone open a kitchen cabinet, and your body braces as if they're about to announce a shortage. A child laughs too loudly, and you instinctively calculate how many steps it would take to reach the emergency supplies, which no longer exist. Someone mentions peaches, and everyone in your household goes quiet, haunted by memories of committee meetings and divided slices. Your first night in your own bed is equally confusing. It's soft, too soft, spacious, suspiciously comfortable. There's no hum from a dying fan, no chorus of snores, no drip from the ceiling announcing its presence. You lie awake for hours, realizing that silence without fear feels different from silence that contains fear. The next morning, you walk outside and enjoy a slow, luxurious stretch. Arms up, spine cracking like celebratory fireworks. A breeze brushes your skin, gentle and fragrant. You inhale deeply, savouring the fresh air like a sommelier tasting fine wine. Someone walking their dog nods politely at you. And then a voice on the radio drifts through an open window. Don't forget, folks, there will be a civil defence drill next. Your soul leaves your body. You freeze mid-step. Your eye twitches violently. Your family also stops what they're doing, united by the same bunker-born reflexes. For a split second, the world tilts. You swear you can smell powdered eggs. You hear phantom static. You feel the ghost of canned beans brushing against your ankles. Then you exhale, slowly, deliberately. It's just a drill, you whisper. You repeat it to yourself until your pulse stops trying to reenact a tap dance routine. The family nods in solemn agreement, standing together like survivors of a shipwreck watching someone inflate a pool float. And gradually, inch by inch, you ease back into normalcy. Real normalcy. The kind that doesn't involve strategic toilet scheduling, ration-based diplomacy, or sleeping with one ear open in case the ceiling gets ideas again. But deep down, the bunker never fully leaves you. It lingers in the cautious way you examine canned goods now, in the reverence you feel for fresh produce, in the way your heart flutters anxiously whenever someone utters phrases like shelter in place. Still, life goes on. You go on. Pretending you never nearly fought your family over a can of corn is simply part of the healing process. Around day 8, you catch your reflection in the stainless steel water tank and experience a quiet internal scream. Your hair has achieved a texture that defies science, somewhere between nuclear frizz and Cold War laminate. Without proper washing, brushing, or humidity control, your scalp stages a rebellion. At this point, even the family dog, if you had been allowed to bring one, would stare in judgment. Bunker hair isn't just messy, it's an event, a phenomenon, a living, evolving creature perched on your skull. The conditions are perfect for disaster. Stale, recycled air, zero moisture, no showers, and a humidity level that hovers between arid desert and abandoned attic. Your follicles, deprived of hope, begin behaving like unsupervised teenagers. Your hair expands, it lifts, it forms shapes not found in nature. Every strand stands at attention, charged with static, ready for combat. You smooth it down, it springs back up. You wet your hands and pat it gently. It hisses at you. You consider shaving your head entirely, but ironically, you don't trust the bunker lighting to guide a safe shave. Nobody wants to be trapped underground with a half-shaved head and regrets. Others in the bunker are facing their own follicular nightmares. Your mother's curls, once soft and organised, have fused into a solid, helmet-like mass that could deflect low-level shrapnel. Your father's hair, usually obedient, has taken on a windswept look, despite the complete lack of wind. It gives him an unsettling resemblance to a frazzled radio announcer who has seen too much. The children face the worst of it. Their hair, bursting with energy like the rest of them, transforms into tiny lightning storms. Every time they run, they generate sparks. Touching anything metal is now a gamble. Your cousin shocked the ventilation fan once and everyone feared it had died for real. Thankfully the fan survives, but the children are now under strict orders not to pet anything conductive. Brushing your hair becomes a full contact sport. You retrieve the communal hairbrush, which has already suffered more trauma than any object should. You drag it through your hair with great care, and it makes a sound like a broom struggling against Velcro. Halfway down, the brush refuses to continue, staging its own protest. You consider conditioning your hair with canned peaches syrup, but the council has already ruled that peaches are too politically sensitive for cosmetic experimentation. Hats become popular, not for style, because style is dead, but for containment. Scarves are tied, bandanas are wrapped. Your grandfather wears a fedora, unironically, for the first time in 20 years, because it's the only thing preventing his hair from rising into a cone. Your sibling tries a beanie, but the beanie loses the fight instantly and now sits atop their head like a disappointed pancake. The emotional impact of bunker hair cannot be overstated. You begin avoiding reflective surfaces, not because you're vain, but because you can't bear to see the chaos perched atop your scalp. Conversations shift from geopolitical tension to follicular despair. How's your hair today? Hostile. Mine's staging a coup. I woke up and it was already frizzy. I think it dreams without me. One day, someone suggests making a hair care plan, but the only available resources are a half-empty tin of petroleum jelly and a hope that feels increasingly delusional. Someone recommends trimming split ends with nail scissors. Someone else suggests rationing comb strokes like they're electricity. No one attempts either. Despite everything, despite the static, the frizz, the looming threat of scalp mutiny, something beautiful happens. Hair becomes a bonding experience. No one judges, no one mocks. You exchange glances filled with mutual understanding and silent promise. We're all doing our best. And in the strangest twist, the bunker hair begins to feel, dare you say it, normal. It becomes part of your bunker persona, the visual emblem of your endurance, a badge of survival, a fluffy, crunchy, wildly unmanageable badge, but a badge nonetheless. Later, when you finally emerge into daylight and see your reflection again, you'll marvel at how sunlight softens the chaos, how warm air coaxes your hair back into something recognizable, how showers and fresh water feel like miracles. But for now you exist in a world where conditioner is a fantasy and bunker hair is the crown you never wanted, but wear with stubborn, ridiculous pride. Eventually the tension builds and erupts over things no rational human in sunlight would ever care about. Someone chews too loudly, someone uses too much flashlight battery, someone moves the canned ravioli one shelf lower. Suddenly it feels like you're living inside a very polite but increasingly unstable pressure cooker, and you're the ingredient that's about to pop. Conflict in the bunker doesn't behave like normal conflict. It doesn't arrive with logic or proportion. Instead, it sneaks into the room disguised as small annoyances, trivial things that would barely register above ground. But underground, they unleash something primal in everyone. It starts with a sigh, a narrowed eye, a muttered comment. Then boom. Emotional detonation. Take the chewing incident, for example. Your father chews with his mouth fully closed, but in the bunker's acoustic, somehow it sounds like he's gnawing through drywall. The noise ricochets off metal walls until it becomes an inescapable reminder of your trapped existence. After 10 minutes, someone snaps, "Can you please chew quieter?" Your father freezes mid-bite, offended and confused. "I'm chewing normally." "No, you're not," someone else adds, as though they've been collecting audio data for days. It's echoing. It sounds like a marching band made of teeth. And that's how you learn that passive-aggressive silence can be louder than any explosion. Then there's the great flashlight battery debate. It happens when your sibling holds the flashlight beam a little too long while reading a comic book. The batteries, of course, are limited. Very limited. Precious. Sacred. Someone across the room gasps sharply as if witnessing a crime. Turn it off. You're wasting battery. I'm on the best part, that's what you said yesterday. Voices rise, tempers flare. Someone suggests rationing seconds of flashlight usage. Someone else proposes creating an official schedule with time slots for reading, walking, looking for socks, and existential dread. You consider volunteering as moderator, but quickly realise you'd rather wrestle a raccoon. But nothing, and truly nothing, compares to the ravioli incident. It begins innocently. Someone moves the canned ravioli from the middle shelf to the lower one, perhaps to reorganise, perhaps because they were bored, perhaps because controlling canned goods is the only agency humans have left underground. Whatever the reason, chaos follows. Who moved the ravioli? What ravioli? The ravioli. The heavy can with the dent on the side. It didn't belong on the middle shelf anyway. That is not the point. You watch grown adults debate the proper location for canned pasta, like they're negotiating the Treaty of Versailles. Voices escalate. Arms wave. Someone produces a crude diagram of shelf arrangement using a scrap of cardboard. You stare at the scene, contemplating your own sanity. Arguments become so strange you start writing them down just to prove later that they actually happened, such as, if you breathe that close to my neck again, I will lose it. Stop rearranging my socks. They have an emotional order. I'm not judging your blanket folding method, but it is wrong. Tell Harold to stop announcing his thoughts out loud. We don't need commentary on everything. You can't call dibs on the floor. It's communal. In the bunker, everything becomes symbolic. Chewing isn't just chewing. It's a reminder you cannot escape. Flashlight use isn't about light. It's about control. Canned ravioli isn't pasta. It's a fragile thread holding society together. Every dispute carries the weight of confinement, fear, hunger, and boredom. And yet, strangely, after the argument's peak, something soft happens. Laughter. Exhausted, delirious laughter at the absurdity of it all. Someone apologises. Someone cracks a joke. Someone suggests creating a rule book titled How Not to Lose Your Mind in a Metal Tube. Harmony returns, not real harmony, but the bunker version of it, where everyone politely ignores their mutual insanity. Because deep down, you all know the truth. These tiny arguments aren't about ravioli or batteries or chewing. They're pressure releases, emotional escape valves, proof that you're still human, still frustrated, still alive enough to care about small things even when big things loom overhead. And somehow, surviving these absurd conflicts teaches you something important. Not all explosions come from bombs. Some come from the simple act of someone sitting in your spot on the bunker floor. And yet, by the end of each day, despite all the quarrels, you still share blankets, meals, and whispered hope. Because underground, unity isn't the absence of arguments. It's surviving them together. As our night in the fallout shelter winds down, take a slow breath, preferably one that doesn't smell like canned beans, and let yourself sink a little deeper into whatever soft place you're resting on. Because tonight, you survived something most people never think about. Not the bomb itself, but the bizarre claustrophobic comedy of simply existing underground with other humans who have needs, habits, and questionable digestive systems. You've weathered powdered meals, won diplomatic battles over canned peaches, listened to the ventilation fan like it was a lullaby sent by fate, and even learned to sleep through the quiet creaks of steel that sounded a little too much like the world ending. And somehow, through all of it, you adapted. Because humans are stubborn like that. Give us a concrete room, a stack of dehydrated potatoes, and a family slowly losing their grip on reality, and we'll still find a way to laugh, argue, love, and keep going. Think of the people who actually built shelters in the 1950s, parents who wanted their kids safe, neighbours who practiced duck-and-cover drills with more hope than logic, and families stocking canned goods because it felt like one tiny thing they could control. Their lives were full of uncertainty, fear, and government pamphlets that probably caused more anxiety than they solved. And yet they endured. They improvised. They learned to find comfort in small things. A working radio, a warm lantern glow, a game of cards in a very crowded room. So tonight, as you lie in your real bed with fresh air, open space, indoor plumbing, and absolutely zero chemical toilet curtains, maybe let a little gratitude settle in. For the calm, for the comfort, for the fact that you can walk outside without first checking a Geiger counter. Our ancestors prepared for disasters that never came, and in doing so, they left us with a strange, touching reminder of how far people will go to protect each other, even when the world feels unsteady. History may be terrifying, bizarre, and occasionally filled with spam, but it's also proof that people are resourceful, hopeful, and just ridiculous enough to get through almost anything. So, close your eyes, breathe softly, and let the last echoes of that bunker fade away. You're safe, you're warm, and for tonight at least the world is quiet. Sleep well.